Good evening. The Planning Commission meeting of November 16th, 2022 is called to order. The Planning Commission meeting is being broadcast live on Glendale TV, viewable on Spectrum Cable, Channel 6, and AT&T UVerse, Channel 99. Meetings are also streamed live in high definition on the city's webpage, glendaleca.gov/live, on youtube.com/MikeGlendale, and on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire devices using a free app called ScreenWeave and choosing Glendale TV from the menu. Meetings are also archived on the city website for viewing anytime at glendaleca.gov/agendas. For public comments and questions during the meeting, please call 818-937-8100. City staff will be submitting the questions and comments in real time to the appropriate person. Current Planning Commission agendas are available by visiting our website at www.glendaleca.gov. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Crochin?
Here.
Commissioner Fuentes is absent. Commissioner Manassian will be joining us late. And Commissioner Shabazian? Here. And Chair Lee?
Here. Reports regarding posting of agenda.
The agenda for the November 16th, 2022 regular meeting of the Glendale Planning Commission was posted on November 9th, 2022 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes.
I'll make a motion.
Okay,
I'll second if we need it.
so moved. Thank you. Next item is oral communication. Any oral communication? I don't see any cards.
And
Okay.
we have no callers.
Okay, so we'll move on to the board commission member comments. Any comments? Commissioners? No? Okay. Moving along. Or business. Item A, 3810 through 3816 4th Avenue, tentative parcel map, PPM 211-3643, GLN number 1644. Staff, please.
Yes, Chair Lee. This item was continued from the Planning Commission meeting of October 5th, 2022, and is being continued to the Planning Commission meeting of January 18th, 2023. So it is being taken off calendar, continued to a date certain, and it will not be renoticed.
Commission Chair, it's actually not being taken off calendar. It's being just continued to a date certain. That's
Date certain.
January.
Forgive me.
Yeah,
It's not
thank you. No worries. Thanks.
for the clarification.
Thank you. Then we'll move on to the new business. Item A, Americana at Brand, PZC 110228. Staff report, please.
Give us a second while we bring up the PowerPoint. All right, good evening, Planning Commission members. The Americana brand is proposing text amendments to Chapter 30.26, the Advertising Signage Overlay Zone. These text amendments include to allow freestanding signs and marquee signs to be ASOZ non-accessory signs. The second is to allow freestanding and marquee signs to be animated signs. And then finally, as a result of these proposed changes, they are requesting an amendment to their development agreement. To facilitate the proposed changes that they're requesting, there are a couple other changes to the ASOZ chapter. Those include including a freestanding sign definition in the chapter, including standards for freestanding signs, amending standards for animated and marquee signs, and then finally two more minor changes to the description and purposes section of the chapter, as well as eliminating the application section of the chapter. I think before going further, it might be a good idea to sort of look back and see what got us where we are now. So the council approved the Glendale Town Center specific plan, which enabled the development of the Americana brand in 2004. And this plan contained sign regulations. One of those sign regulations was to not allow what was called large accessory wall signs. In 2010, Council created Chapter 30.26, the Advertising Signage Overlay Zone, which is what we're looking at amending today. As a result of the Americana and the Glendale Galleria requesting or submitting a zone change application. So this was proposed as an overlay zone and was placed on the Galleria and the town center districts of the downtown specific plan. And part of what this chapter did was establish criteria by which a sort of a geographic area could be designated as an ASOZ. And then it contains certain sign regulations to be allowed by an ASOZ. One of those regulations included that only ASOZ accessory signs were permitted and prohibited animation or LED signs. So this permitted the large signs, the large wall signs that you see today at the Americana and at the Galleria, the large wall signs. Okay, in 2013, council approved further amendments to the ASOZ, which allowed for ASOZ non-accessory signs and some forms of animated signs. And those two terms I'll go over in just a couple moments. And then finally, in 2019, 2020, council approved sign location changes as requested by the Americana and the required development agreement as a result of those changes. The DA included provisions for duration and regulation of signs and public benefit. So let's fast forward to today again. That was a little background of how we got to where we are today. As I mentioned, the Americana is currently requesting that freestanding signs and marquee signs be permitted non-accessory content and animation. The 2004 Town Center specific plan included references and provisions to allow up to 24 freestanding signs within the Americana brand. However, freestanding signs were not defined in the TCSP, the ASOZ, which is what we're looking at today, nor is there any reference to them in the city's sign regulations. So as part of the text amendment, we are proposing a freestanding sign definition. And a freestanding sign means those signs identified in the town center specific plan as unstaffed, standalone, self-supporting kiosk structures located in fixed locations, the sole purpose of which is to advertise businesses, services, and goods sold or produced. So that's a new definition that we felt was important to include in the text amendments. And this definition really reflects the existing freestanding signs currently located at the Americana. And then the standards, which I mentioned previously, I will discuss later in this presentation. So if you look at the slide on the screen, you'll notice sort of in the right-hand portion, right below the top man sign, That is the freestanding sign that we're referring to. That's what we're defining, and that's what's existing out there now. I think it's also helpful to review accessory and non-accessory signage and their definitions. So with limited exception, the city's sign regulations only permit accessory signs. And accessory signs are advertisement that is related only to the primary use of the premises or site on which the sign is located. And sort of non-accessory signs are defined as sort of the inverse of that. The ASOZ modifies those restrictions on accessory signs, and ASOZ accessory signs allow both advertisement related to the primary use, which is similar to the accessory sign definition, but it also allows to advertise other businesses located within the ASOZ zone. So, for example, as I mentioned in the staff report, an ASOZ accessory sign located at the Americana could actually advertise JCPenney's, which is located at the Galleria. That normally would not, that would be prohibited under our sign code. This overlay zone allows that type of arrangement. Finally, the ASOZ, due to the, I think, the 2013 amendment, also permits non-accessory advertising on ASOZ wall signs. So for instance, Ford could advertise on an accessory wall sign, even though there is not a Ford dealership within the Americana, within the Galleria, within the ASOZ overlay. So what the Americana is proposing to do is expand this non-accessory content to both the sort of the newly defined freestanding signs as well as the marquee sign on the site now. And I sort of went over this slide already. Animated signs. Animated signs, and this is the definition from our zoning code, are designed and constructed to give messages through a sequence of progressive changes or parts by either action or motion, flashing or color changes requiring electronic or manual energy, and as mentioned previously, are typically not permitted in the city's sign regulations. In the ASOZ, however, animated signs are currently only permitted as wall signs. And these signs are restricted to only those that don't change images more frequently than every 8 seconds. So you've got an image for 8 seconds, and then it sort of turns off, and then you've got another image for 8 seconds. It doesn't allow sort of movement within the sign. You couldn't show someone running. So the Americana is proposing to expand the allowance for these animated signs to both freestanding signs and marquee signs, as well as to allow not only the static image, the 8-second off, 8-second, but also allow movement to them as well. Staff supports these text amendments as listed on the slide. The ASOZ is located in a heavily developed mixed-use environment, and these changes will enhance the exciting environment that the city hopes to build upon. Revenue will be increased, and these changes align with the economic development goals to enhance economic activity. The proposed non-accessory advertising will not impact the aesthetics of the existing ASOZ signs, and there's really no change in appearance of the signs, nor any change that would impact traffic safety. Additionally, sign standards will ensure that this will continue to be the case with these additions or enhancements to these signs. Standards to wall, freestanding, marquee, and animated signs include location restrictions, brightness standards, and prohibition on sound effects and projecting elements. And these regulations are currently on the ASOZ wall signs. They will be also required for the freestanding and marquee signs. It is important to note that there are no proposed changes to the ASOZ wall signs. So for instance, while the current text amendment proposes to allow movement on animated signs for freestanding and marquee signs, it does not propose that for the existing wall signs. So the existing wall signs will remain static images that go on for 8 seconds and then off. So that's a sort of an important distinction that, I want to make clear. Freestanding sign standards include material approvals and architectural compatibility, maximum size limits, and the fact that they must be located on private property a minimum of 25 feet away from the public right-of-way. And those standards are more specified in the staff report as well as the changes to the code. And then an additional marquee sign standard is that they may not be visible from the public street unless they contain only static animation. So again, for instance, the Americana has a marquee sign at the theater. That theater faces inward. You can't see it from surrounding streets. That marquee sign would allow both static as well as movement images. If at some juncture the Americana would like to install a marquee sign, let's just say facing Colorado Street, they would be allowed the static image, but not the movement. So as I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, there are other amendments that are proposed to facilitate the amendments that were actually requested. In the description and purposes section, it is recommended, that section is recommended to be changed to acknowledge the fact that ASOZ signs can also now be freestanding signs and not located on a building. It's a, kind of a little tweak. One of the purposes referenced wall signs. Well, now they can be wall signs and freestanding signs, so a little change there. Additionally, and really unrelated to the present request, the applications section of this chapter will be eliminated, or is proposed to be eliminated from the ASOZ chapter to reflect that the city's permitting process has changed really, and all our applications are now must be done in an online format. So we don't need 20 copies of something because it's all online. So should the text amendments be approved, the applicant is proposing to make some changes to the existing freestanding and marquee signs currently located at the Americana. The proposed changes are shown on the slide. So the left image is the proposed kiosk sign. The right image shows the marquee sign. And I go into more detail in the staff report, but basically the images on the screen now are what they're intending to do. Very few changes to the freestanding signs. They will get a little bit smaller. The advertising screen will get a little bit smaller, but basically the same shape. And the marquee sign, they are just going to replace it with something that's capable of animation, movement, static. So an amendment to the development agreement is required when changes are made to the ASOZ, which is presently proposed. The Planning Commission needs to review this ZA for consistency with the city's general plan, the town center specific plan, and the downtown specific plan. Staff recommends finding that the DA is consistent with this document. Basically, the changes made to the DA from the previous one include amending the effective date of the DA. The DA from a couple years ago established a 20-year effective date, starting from the date of adoption, so 20 minus approximately 2 years. This new DA continues with the 20-year effective date. So sort of in effect, the signs that were under the DA 2 years ago get an extra 2 years. So the DA for all the signs ends on the same date, if that makes sense. And then the other change to the development agreement is just the fact that we're now incorporating two types of signs that are proposed for animation and for non-accessory content. So that's addressed in the changes to the DA. You also need to consider the addendum. That addendum for this project was included in your packet. However, what wasn't included was the initial mitigated neg deck. I apologize for that. That's the document that was on your desk here. Basically, no changes were needed to the 2010 mitigated neg deck. The mitigation monitoring and reporting program stays the same. And the addendum just basically addresses things like, brightness standards, which are already sort of contained in the current ASOZ, and will also be a requirement of the new changes, the freestanding signs and the marquee signs. One other thing, we noted, well, I guess a couple other things. In reviewing the strike-on underline version of the chapter 30.26, I would like to suggest some additional verbiage at section 30.26.050 050D3. And that paragraph, it's newly written, newly included in the ASOZ zone. I would like to suggest a little bit of additional language. Currently it reads, freestanding signs and marquee signs shall not change images more frequently than each 8 seconds, with a transition period of 1 second or less when static images are used. That's the first sentence. Then the second sentence, freestanding signs may contain a message through a sequence of progressive changes, et cetera, et cetera. What I would like to add to that sentence is freestanding signs and marquee signs, if not visible from the public street, may contain on and on and on. That acknowledges sort of the difference between it acknowledges that marquee signs can have both static and movement, but if they have movement, it can only be a sign that is not visible from a public street. So it's kind of clarifying language. So I'd like to request that. And then 2 changes. We've needed to renumber the sections. obviously, because we've eliminated a section. And so, for instance, section 30.26.070 has become 30.26.060. However, the paragraph underneath it still references 30.26.060. So that needs to change. And there were two, I believe, situations where that was the case. So to conclude, staff recommends that the Planning Commission consider the addendum to the 2010 mitigated negative declaration and addendum. In addition, we recommend that the Planning Commission find that the proposed text amendment and development agreement are consistent with the city's general plan and specific plans, and recommend this to City Council. And then finally, we recommend approval of the text amendment and development agreement to City Council. So that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Kissel. Questions for the staff? Commissioners? Go ahead.
I have a question. So just for clarification, currently, if someone is interested in applying for a sign, they come to the city, they do the application. Well, it's going to be online from this point on, it sounds like. I was just curious to know, just reading how we are going, because there was discussion about, more revenue. Just curious to know if there's going to be a different fee structure for this. And I don't know if that's something that's going to go, and be approved as part of the CIP or as part of the, fee structure for the next year. But I was just curious to know if that's something.
Fee structure related to this or fee structure related to the new way we're?
To this, actually.
To this.
Yes, I was just curious to know how we are going, because there was a discussion about how we are going to gain revenue. It was just,
Sure, and Jillian can step in when she needs to, but currently, the city receives some revenue from the ASOZ non.
It's on.
Oh. Okay, sorry. Now I can hear myself more. Okay, so currently the city receives some revenue from the ASOZ non-accessory signs that are currently located at both the Americana and the Galleria. The development agreement, well, let me step back. Freestanding signs and the marquee signs, when they become animated, and more particularly when they become non-accessory, those signs will also be part of the development agreement, and the city will receive advertising revenue from those signs as well. So that's how the increase comes to be. Does that make sense?
I guess it does in a way. So from what I'm understanding, if, let's say we approve this, it goes to council, it's approved, it's just gonna follow the fee structure that's currently approved for last year. No, you're shaking your head. Okay.
If I could chime in here, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. So what we've got is called a public benefit agreement fee. And the way that's calculated is based on a percentage. So that would be for the original signs that are out there now, not the new signs that are proposed. So that's a percentage times the gross revenues for the original signs. What will be added to that calculation is a percentage of the total incremental revenue from the new signs. So together, that will be the public benefit fee. So that's the component that will be an increase. And what we are calculating that on is an annual baseline revenue amount. We've had discussions with, this amount is, the revenue is submitted to the city on an annualized basis, and we have audit rights to take a look at, to ensure the accuracy of those revenues, the fee submittals. And so in looking at what that average baseline revenue would be, we have left a blank in the agreement, but at this moment in time, we're estimating, projecting it to be about $385,000 $1,000 annually. Now, that is not inclusive of what will happen when the marquees become animated and have the opportunity to do non-accessory advertising, as will occur with the freestanding signs, which are now being defined and will also be permitted to have non-accessory as well as accessory signage advertising. So in looking at the last 5 years and taking average over the last 5 years and taking into consideration impacts from COVID and the decline in the amount of interest there is in static signage, everyone seems to be converting over to these internally lit and animated signs. So that is the projected annual amount that we anticipate, which will be the annual baseline revenue. If you want more specifics on that, the representatives from the Americana are here and can speak to that. But that is why we are indicating that we expect there to be additional revenues. So not just from the original signs, but also this incremental value that we'll be receiving, because these are far more valuable signs, although we aren't increasing the number of signs. So that's the basis for making that statement.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
That was very
Yeah.
clear, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Van Muyden. I had a similar question, and that was well answered. So any other questions for the staff?
Just for clarification, do we have a clear definition for a marquee sign? I mean, I think I get the general idea of it, but do we have one? I didn't see it in the specific document in our staff report.
Right, we do, it's in the sign regulations, in the zoning code. So that's why, there really wasn't a discussion of the definition here, because we already have the definition.
Okay, fair enough.
I did have one more question.
Yes, go ahead.
And it was just regarding, so the permitting section is going to be removed, from what I understand, and that's only because everything is going to be, or it's gonna be done online, is that what it is?
Basically, there's a section in the code right now that, and let me just get it.
3026040.
Yeah, there's a section in our code right now called applications that really spells out what the applicant needs to provide to us if they want to apply for an ASOZ, including 20 copies of the application, including, other items. That doesn't make any sense anymore, given the fact that we are requiring all applications to be submitted online. So similar changes may occur to variance applications or conditional use permit applications or other applications as we make changes to the zoning code. This just seemed like, since changes were being proposed, we might as well capture everything at this point. So it really has nothing to do with what the Americana is proposing now. It's just kind of a cleanup.
Sounds good. Thanks for clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Kissel. Any more questions? Yes.
Quick question. Just a clarification. Early on in the presentation, you mentioned about the animation signs. These are not going on the major roads. I know you mentioned that if it's on Colorado, it's not going to be static signs, but that's how it is. It's not going to be any of the animation on, like, we have one on the bridge, it's on Central. So that's going to be, not going to be animation, it's going to be static, yes?
Well,
Anything that is facing major the streets.
Both static and what I call movement are really considered animation. Currently, wall signs can only be static. There's a regulation currently in the ASOZ zone that requires them to be static images of 8 seconds with a 1 second transition period. That is not going to change with these changes. They will continue to allow static images and not allow movement. The change is the freestanding signs and the marquee sign can do sort of both types of animation.
So when you said staff recommends the approval, so the staff did some traffic safety search or?
Well, I mean, we cited that because there aren't going to be any changes to the wall signs. You're not, the wall signs are going to be as they are now. The changes are to the freestanding signs and to the marquee sign. The marquee sign does not face any traffic, aside from pedestrian traffic. And the marquee signs, and maybe I should have noted this in the presentation, the existing marquee signs, the locations of those 24 signs, they are not proposing any changes. They will simply be, the existing signs will be taken out and replaced with signs that allow animation, that allow non-accessory content. And there's stipulation that they can't be on the public right-of-way, and they need to be, or they can't be, they have to be on private property, and they can't be within 25 feet of a public right-of-way. And so with those caveats, that's where we said, there aren't going to be traffic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay, this time I'd like to bring up Mr. Chris Robertson. Oh, it's Ms. Chris Robertson, sorry.
No problem. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. It's great to be here with you tonight. My name is Chris Robertson. I'm Vice President of Planning, Government, and Community Relations for Caruso. I'd like to start by thanking staff for all of their hard work and a very comprehensive staff report and presentation. We don't have a ton to add regarding the technical piece of it. I just want to underscore again that these are existing signs. There's no changes proposed beyond converting them to digital. So what you see there today is essentially what you'll see there when the conversion takes place. This is an opportunity for us to modernize the Americana, make sure that it continues to be a vibrant town center as it was originally intended, while giving the city significant community benefit that the city can use at its discretion. So we view it as a win-win. There's no impacts. We really look forward to moving forward to the next stage and installing these. And thank you for your time and consideration. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Robertson. Any questions?
I have a question. It's curiosity. It doesn't have anything to do with Glendale. It's actually just curious about if you guys, I haven't been to the Grove for a very long time. I wonder if you guys have these signs at the Grove.
We do actually, yeah. We just installed them. They're very, very high quality. The kiosks at the Grove were similar to what we have at the Americana, and the character is very much preserved.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any more cards, so with that, I'm going to close the public hearing and then go into deliberation.
I mean, I'm willing to move based on what we've heard. I want to thank you guys for your presentation. Thank you to staff for such a detailed staff report. I think, the applicant said it best. This is a win-win for our city and for the developer and landowner of the property. I think just, modernizing the Americana, this is the central hub of our city, and that should be viewed as a win for all of us here in Glendale. So I'm happy to move and approve of this.
Thank you.
And I'm ready to second that.
Okay.
Adding the information that staff added at the end. And well
Clarifications.
said. I think Americana is kind of our core, and we are not the suburban city. We're Glendale. We're we're growing. So yeah, I think this is a good move for us.
Americana put
Thank
that
you.
on map.
Well, Commissioner Mendelson, you have anything to add?
No.
No? Well, I think we have a motion and we have a support, so
Okay, I want to make sure that, don't they need separate motions, Jillian, for the text amendment, consistency, and then the approval?
The motion before the Planning Commission is for purposes of the development agreement just reading through the long paragraph, recommends that the city council approve the proposed amendment to the development agreement, consider the addendum, and adopt the proposed amendments to Title 30. So that would be the proposed ordinance. They're all included there, but the change to that motion would be, and the amendments as proposed to the ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So with that clarification, so we have motion and then we have support. So, and that will take care of,
Roll call?
yeah, roll call, please.
Okay. Mr. Troglian,
Yes.
Ms. Shabazian,
Yes.
Mr. Manassian,
Yes.
and Mr. Lee.
Aye. So with the 4-0, it passes. Okay, next item is item B, citywide general plan amendment case number PGPA 2119840.
Shirley, allow us to hand out. Thank you.
Thank you.
These were comments that were submitted after 5 o'clock, and this is the resolution. Thank you.
Eric, would you like to do the introduction, Mr. Kraus? Yes.
Are we live right now?
Yes, we are.
Introduce the item.
Yes, we're waiting for the staff to introduce the
We
case.
just needed a moment, so, and everything's been passed out.
Oh, am I introducing it?
So, or would you like me to?
Mr. Chair, have we read the item into the record?
No, I would be more than happy to read it into the record, so.
I thought I did that, but go ahead, yeah.
So, the next and last item on tonight's Planning Commission agenda is a citywide general plan amendment, case number PGPA 2119840. General plan amendment updating the City of Glendale's housing element, a document that outlines Glendale's housing policies. State law mandates periodic updates to the housing element, which was last updated in January 2014. This sixth update provides policies, programs, and actions to accommodate the city's share of regional housing needs assessment, otherwise known as RHNA. The housing element identifies sites to accommodate future projected housing growth need for the 2021-2029 planning period. The sixth cycle housing element update does not propose to change the zoning, density, or development regulations applicable to any sites to accommodate the city's regional housing needs allocation. The Planning Commission is asked to make a recommendation to Council concerning adoption of the sixth cycle housing element. The sixth cycle housing element was first adopted by the City Council on February 1st, 2022, and has been amended based on comments received by the California Department of Housing and Community Development. As noted for the environmental determination, the proposed project is exempt under state CEQA guidelines, section 15061B3, common sense exemption. because the project involves policies, programs, and actions to meet the city's RENA housing allocation numbers, and that would either would not cause a significant effect on the environment or incorporates actions that have already been taken by the city. The project is further exempt pursuant to State CEQA Guidelines Section 15283 and California Government Code Section 65584G.
Thank you. Mr. Cross.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, Mr. Chairman Lee, members of the Planning Commission. Staff, with the assistance of the city consultant, has revised the sixth cycle element adopted by City Council on February 1st, 2022. The amendments are consistent with the comments received from the California Department of Housing and Community Development letter on the adopted draft that was sent to them earlier this year. The Planning Commission tonight is asked to review the amendments to the sixth cycle housing element and make a recommendation to City Council for adoption. We did receive one pretty late comment letter, came in at 5:10 this evening. Really just provided you all with a copy of that. It's from Alex Charchian. Don't know if I pronounced that correctly or not.
Chachurian.
Okay, thank you. And now, so his comment goes into discussing the just cause eviction ordinance. And this is an issue we've been kind of going back and forth with this person on, in terms of checking him with our housing department and then also our city attorney's office. I believe it was Lucy Garpetian that was working with them. So he's had discussions with city staff on his particular issue regarding that, and he did also send a comment letter to HCD as part of the public review period on the housing element, and we have addressed those comments because those were also noted in the letter from HCD. And Amanda will kind of go over, Amanda Tropiano with our consultant with DeNovo that helped us prepare the element, we'll kind of go over the different changes that were made to the element in response to the housing element, the HCD's letter. And so there's a matrix that was provided as an attachment to the staff report. And so the comments that he's referring to were, there's in the matrix, it shows that we address that on bottom of page 1 and into page 2 is kind of the different areas that we amended in the housing element to address the comments that we did receive from this gentleman. So with that, I'm going to introduce Amanda Tropiano. She's going to go through the comments we received from HCD and then kind of also how those were addressed in the revised previously adopted element. Thank you.
All right, thank you, commissioners. Thank you for having me tonight. I am going to share a brief presentation that will outline those requests that we received from the Department of Housing and Community Development, or HCD, and describe how the revisions proposed tonight respond to those comments and be available to answer any questions you might have. So with that, let me go ahead and share my screen just for the presentation, and then we'll go ahead and take comments.
Are we able to get these on our screens?
Oh, thank you.
So to provide just an update as to what brings us here tonight, as Eric had mentioned, we were in front of you in December of 2021 with a draft of a housing element that was circulated for public review. Revisions were made to that draft, and ultimately a version of that was adopted by the City Council in February of this year. According to state guidelines regarding the update to a housing element, that adopted version is required to be sent to the State Department of Housing and Community Development, or HCD, for a mandated 60-day review. During that period, they look at specific topic areas and provide feedback to agencies on any necessary revisions required in order to fully comply with state housing law. So that element was provided to HCD subsequent to the City Council adoption on February 22nd of 2022. And 60 days later, we received a comment letter from HCD on April 22nd of this year. The comments, and I'll spend the most of my presentation describing those, generally are related to 4 topic areas. And these are generally consistent with the topic areas for requested revisions for agencies throughout the state. So obviously Glendale, like every other city and county in California, is going through an update to its housing element. So these revisions are very typical that HCD has requested, and those 4 topic areas generally relate to the research and analysis regarding fair housing. As you might remember, this is a new topic area required for housing elements in the 6th cycle, so it has not been considered previously. The site's inventory, an analysis of constraints to housing, both government and non-government constraints, as well as specific revisions to the city's housing programs. In order to help focus the review on these revisions, we did track changes from the adopted version. Those are shown in red line changes as well as highlighted in yellow. The items highlighted in yellow, those are the revisions that have been made subsequent to the City Council's adoption in February. So that is the new information being presented for the public's review and for your consideration tonight. So I wanted to provide some perspective because when we spoke last in December of last year, in the SCAG region, which has about 196 agencies, only about 8% of the agencies at that time had an adopted and certified element. This review and revision cycle, or the 6th cycle, has been particularly challenging for a variety of reasons. We've described those at length, including new requirements for special types of analyses, late guidance from the state and local agencies, and just a standard of review, particularly for the site's inventory, that is new for this cycle. But looking forward to today, you can see that out of 196 agencies in the SCAG region, as of this morning, 79 are in compliance. That's about 40%. LA counties are right around consistent with that at around 39% of those agencies. All agencies in the SCAG region, except for 4, have submitted a housing element for some period of review. Some have been adopted, some haven't. So Glendale's kind of just right in the mix here. I think that's what I want to convey, is that we are working diligently with HCD to resolve these issues, as so many of your peers are as well. San Diego's region preceded the SCAG region by about 6 months. They have many fewer agencies, 19. Only 10 of those have been found in compliance, just over half of them. And they were due in April of 2021. So you can see that many agencies, Glendale included, is working hard to address these findings satisfactorily and ensure that you can be found in compliance with that state housing law. Specifically, as a result of HCD's requests for revisions, the following sections of the housing element have been revised. In part 1, that's the first 50 or so pages, your housing plan, specifically your housing programs and your quantified objectives have been revised, and I'll review those in detail. In the background report, that's the next 250 pages or so. Most of the revisions are focused around analysis regarding constraints to housing development, housing resources, including the site's inventory and the assessment of fair housing, and the site's inventory, which is included as Appendix A, as well as the public engagement summary, Appendix B, have also been revised. So looking specifically at those 4 topic areas that required revisions, the city has made the following modifications to address HCD's comments. In regards to fair housing, we've added additional analysis regarding fair housing statistics and qualitative information that staff has been able to provide to supplement the data provided in that section. We've added additional local and regional analysis and discussion to the fair housing topic areas. We've covered those previously, including areas of low income, persons with disabilities, seniors, female-headed households, areas of racial or ethnic concentration. We've compared those both locally and regionally. We added a quantified site inventory as it relates to fair housing indicators and added additional metrics and milestones to fair housing programs really throughout the housing plan, and we'll describe those in a few slides. The site's inventory section, which is part of the background report, has been updated in a number of ways, but I'd like to start first off reiterating what was introduced as this item was introduced, which is The housing element continues to find that the city has adequately zoned and designated sites available to accommodate your arena at all income levels. It does not propose that any site be rezoned or upzoned to accommodate your arena. So all of the sites identified in the city's site inventory currently allow residential development at the densities identified in the housing element. So that has not changed. What we have revised is providing additional clarification on the status and affordability of ongoing and proposed projects. We've discussed this previously. The city has obviously invested significant time and resources in the conversion of market rate units to deed restricted units affordable to moderate income households. We have been working closely with the state to understand what Glendale can count as a credit towards your arena. We originally had started with kind of the full spectrum of projects that have been converted during the planning period. I'd like to say that Glendale is the only city using this mechanism right now in the arena cycle, so it was quite challenging to work with HCD through this effort, but ultimately we did receive direction from them that the 125 units we had counted were not allowed to be counted as a credit in our arena, but they will be able to be counted as progress towards meeting your arena. This is just a nuance or a quirkiness of the state requirements. So we can't count it in the housing element, but when staff reports on progress towards meeting the arena for this calendar year, for the year of 2022, those units will count. So you will be able to take credit for those eventually. We provided additional project examples to determine adequate capacity at sites. We expanded the analysis of the non-vacant sites inventory to specify the objective evaluation standards we used. We included an additional discussion on some unique site characteristics, such as sites that are uniquely sized or have unique ownership patterns. We also identified 15 new sites in the commercial zones where residential uses are already allowed that meet those objective criteria that we've outlined in the housing element, such as the age of the structure, the improvement to land value ratio, the existing floor area ratio, the allowable density and capacities. And we've provided some clarification on existing zoning standards, specifically related to emergency shelters, manufactured homes, and ADUs. This is an update of a slide previously presented with the revised inventory shown on the screen, indicating that the credits towards the city's arena are related to projects that are constructed or under construction during the planning period, as well as projects that are approved but not yet under construction. You can see here that I've indicated in strikeout that 1717 Verdugo has been removed as a credit. Again, you'll be able to take take credit for that or count it on your annual progress report. And then the site's strategy to accommodate the six-cycle arena has added the opportunity for underutilized commercial sites. These sites have been quantified. This is a snapshot of what's provided in the housing element. The intent is to describe to you that through this process, the city continues to demonstrate that there are adequate sites appropriately designated and zoned to meet arena, including the provision of a surplus at all income levels, and no rezoning or upzoning is required in order to meet your arena requirements. In regards to the revisions of constraints, we've provided additional clarification on where residential uses are allowed and how they are permitted. We've added some additional analysis of constraints associated with the city's existing development standards. We've provided clarification on a number of items requested, including the city's fees and exactions, your local processing and permit procedures, as well as on and off-site improvements. And we have included programs to address constraints that HCD identified as potentially constraining the development or affordability of housing in Glendale. And we'll describe those revisions as well. So specifically in terms of the program revisions, this is really where the bulk of the amendments are located. So this is in your housing plan in the list of programs. We did respond to specific HCD findings that directed the city to make specific program revisions, such as a specific time frame they'd like to see included for a program or a specific metric that they were expecting. HCD also provided general guidance that a number of programs did need to be revised in order to affirmatively further fair housing, as well as reduce those government constraints. So we've included those revisions as part of this package as well. Through this process, we also have received additional guidance from HCD in terms of what allows a program to be considered as contributing to the city's duty to affirmatively further fair housing. And I thought I would share those with you. They are specifically looking for a program to include a specific action or commitment. They're looking for a metric, so a way to track progress. They're looking for a specific time frame, and they're looking for a geographic target. So we have evaluated all of the city's programs identified as being part of your fair housing plan for these 4 qualities to ensure that they are provided. We've also summarized them in a new table included in the housing plan. Listed on the screen are those programs that have been revised specifically to address the fair housing findings. Those are primarily related to adding unique geographic targets, such as targeting program, education, or outreach to areas of high or highest opportunity, or areas where certain fair housing issues are most prevalent, such as overcrowding or overpayment. So you can see the revisions shown on the right column of this table. The geographic target was the most popular revision. We've also included specific metrics and timeframes as necessary to address these programs. The programs that have been revised are primarily related to preserving and protecting the city's existing affordable housing stock through the multifamily acquisition or rehab loan program, code enforcement, and the conservation of deed-restricted affordable units. We've also included some specific information on other ongoing city programs, such as the way the city implements density bonus, the direct financial assistance that the city provides to providing housing, the city's inclusionary zoning ordinance, and the way that that can be tracked or measured. We've also included some minor revisions to the Section 8 voucher program, as well as the Tenant Community Opportunity to Purchase program, the Fair Housing Plan Anti-Displacement Evaluation program, as well as the kind of AFFH program that summarizes all of this information in one place. So the revision there is really a summary table to help make it crystal clear that all of these revisions have been made and these 4 target areas are addressed within each of the programs. In terms of the site's inventory, we have identified several specific program revisions, primarily related to providing more discrete timelines. We've updated the city's land use policy and development capacity program to reflect the new site inventory numbers, identified a number of revisions for the public property conversion to housing program, or could be, the implementation of the City Surplus Land Act. We've also provided some minor revisions to the city's state-required replacement housing program, a new program that was introduced as part of this cycle to explore the adaptive reuse of existing structures, some additional guidance on ADUs, the adequate alternative sites. This is that conversion of market rate to deed-restricted moderate income units program, as well as expanding the program on mixed-use standards on transportation corridors to really help support the findings related to those underutilized commercial sites. And the city has made a number of revisions to the zoning code amendments. These are specifically in response to state requirements. I'm here to kind of convey to you that HCD has very clear expectations on how the city's zoning ordinance should describe certain qualities and respond to pieces of state legislation and state housing law, as well as the public health and safety code. And these revisions are very common through this cycle. HCD has asked cities to include them as part of the housing programs so that they can be implemented in a timely manner following housing element adoption. We've added some additional revisions to the city's permit streamlining program. This is an ongoing effort to streamline the city's permit process, as well as multimodal development housing standards. This is already an ongoing program that staff is working on. And I did want to call out the specific changes to the zoning code amendments. These are included in program 9B. These are state required actions really in order to have a compliant housing element. These will need to be included. They include reviewing and revising the city's reasonable accommodation procedures to be consistent with state law, to review and revise the guest parking standards for the PRD zone and efficiency in one-bedroom units, to update the city's multifamily and mixed-use development and permitting standards. Again, this is already an ongoing process as part of a prior program. To prepare and adopt objective design standards for multifamily and mixed-use projects. This is also already ongoing and consistent with state law. To update the city zoning to ensure that zoning permits group homes objectively and with approval certainty, also consistent with state law. And to resolve density misalignments between the general plan and zoning designations that happen in the city's high-density zone. So, where do we head from here? Obviously, tonight I'm here to present the draft revisions to the adopted housing element for a public hearing with the Planning Commission. We are scheduled to be heard by the City Council on December 6th. Subsequent to Council's direction, we expect to send the readopted housing element back to HCD for a subsequent review. We continue to work proactively with our reviewer and senior management at HCD to address any necessary issues, to provide clarification, direction on any of the revisions, and we'll continue to solicit those public comments through this review process. Based on this schedule, we would expect to have a findings letter returned to the city sometime in mid-February of next year. So with that, I'm going to conclude the presentation portion. I can toggle back if we need to pull up any of the other slides, but I wanted to take it off the screen so we can have the discussion. I can answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Any questions? That was a lot to digest.
I have one question. Just regarding I believe it's in Strategy 1 Adequate Sites Program 1A, just regarding the credits for constructed units. So I understood the rationale for counting the units towards the 2021 end of year submittal rather than as a credit towards the number. Does that still apply for the figures that are in this paragraph here? Credits for constructed units of 3,437, which herein was changed to 252, and entitled units of 1,344, which was decreased to 1,120. So is that difference also being applied in 2021, or are we losing those credits altogether, just for clarification?
Most of those units actually were credited towards the prior planning period, so they were recorded in 2021 and credited towards your 5th cycle progress. So any unit produced in Glendale has counted at some point. Most of those credits that you see, that reduction in those revisions, were credited towards your 5th cycle progress. So I think to answer your question most clearly, they are being all counted somewhere, most of them not towards the 6th cycle though.
But even if they took place in 2021 and we were over and beyond the requirements for the past cycle, they're not being allowed to be rolled over. I think I mentioned this in our initial meeting on the housing element, but just want to kind of understand the rationale for that. It's whereas other cities didn't meet their goals.
Yes, the state law is very clear. If a unit was constructed prior to July 1st of 2021, that unit is counted towards progress of the city's 5th cycle RHNA. If it was constructed after July 1st of 2021, it is included as a credit in this housing element. So that is the cutoff date, July 1st of 2021.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Menashian.
Yes, I have a question regarding the 50 new site zones and the underutilized commercial sites. Have you already identified these underutilized commercial sites already? Or are you still in the works? Is there something that we can use these buildings to convert to residential housing?
The 15 sites have been identified. They are listed by APN and property characteristics in the city's inventory as part of Appendix A. They're summarized as part of the background report and the housing element. Some of those sites are developed with existing structures. However, one of the qualities that we look for when identifying an underutilized site is a site with a building that is reaching the end of its useful life. So the building is 25 or 30 years old. So all 15 of these sites are either being used as surface parking lots or or they have a structure that is quite dated and likely, again, reaching the end of its useful life. So while the city is continuing to explore opportunities for adaptive reuse of properties, these particular properties would be more likely to be redeveloped into housing rather than converted through an adaptive reuse program.
All right, thank you.
Question, Chair.
Commissioner Sebastian?
Yes, thank you. I actually was going to ask a question similar, I think pretty similar to what Commissioner Manassian just asked. So in the report, we talk about the preparation of a list by June of 2023, which is going to have the properties. But then in the report, in the appendix, we have the 15 sites with the APN numbers. And I did notice from our last meeting, there has been a change. You know, most of these are, it seems like they're either industrial structures or parking lots. So I'm just trying to understand, are we going to be updating this list, or are we talking about something different when we're talking about a list that's going to be prepared by June of 2023?
We wouldn't be updating the list. This is the list. The June of 2023 guidance is to make the list more user-friendly and available for the public and developers in particular to identify easily the sites in the inventory. Right now, Appendix A uses a state-required format that we believe can be improved and help educate the public and the development community better. So that's what the June 2023 timeframe is.
To follow up on that, will this be brought back to City Council? I just want to make sure that, I mean, looking at the APN numbers, I can kind of read what the description is. You know, it tells us it's an industrial site, there's no structure, or it'll tell us it's a parking lot or something like that. Will this be brought back to City Council, or will it be, I see it being shaken by staff. So Council will be seeing that list, it sounds like, right?
Yes, we are scheduled to present this, including the list, to City Council on December 6th.
Okay, but hold on, so does that mean we are going to have that final list with the changes that you said? And by change, I mean a little more clear what they are, ready by then?
We can provide a more user-friendly list as part of that effort. The sites identified in Appendix A will not change, and this is the list that would be presented to council for their consideration.
Okay, thank you. And the only reason I bring this up is because last time when this was presented to us, there were some sites that, you know, as we kind of looked through, we found that there are sites that are going to stay. So I was just trying to make sure that, you know, council will be able to see exactly what those sites are. That was my only question. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sebastian. Any more questions? Mr. Action?
Can we get some clarification on just how an area of high or highest resource is defined within the element, and how that's going to, I guess, tie into the objective section? It's also in Program 1A, Land Use Policy and Development Capacity.
Sure. So areas of higher highest resource are determined by the state's TCAC board. This is how tax credits are allocated to fund affordable housing projects. They map a variety of indicators, including access to jobs, transit, higher, and then socioeconomic qualities such as higher incomes, higher education levels, access to quality education. So there are a variety of factors. Those are detailed as part of the fair housing section. So those areas of high or highest opportunity are predetermined and are set through that TCAC map. Those are shown in a figure as part of that fair housing section of Section 6 in the background report. What HCD is looking for is to ensure that programs that support the city's duty to affirmatively further fair housing, recognize that it would be important to allow for new opportunities for housing in areas of highest resource. In general, those are in areas where existing uses are already developed and there's not a lot of existing underutilized property. So the city's introduced some new programs as part of these revisions to help just expand those choices and focus education, outreach, and programs in those areas in order to ensure that areas of all opportunity in Glendale are provided the same attention and program emphasis through this planning period.
Okay, and just as a quick follow-up, it's encouraged for the city to do all it can in order for this to be the case, where here it says 15% of the new units and 30% of all lower income units would be located in the areas identified by TCAC. So just want to clarify, it's not it's set requirement. The city is encouraged to do all it can to meet this preference, I guess, from HCD. Is that fair to say?
That's a fair statement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any more questions? Good. Well, Ms. Tropiano, I think you've done really well, presenting this to us. So I guess we're ready to go into deliberation.
Chair, I'm sorry, can I have a clarification question. And it's about the RFPs that are listed. So it sounds like by 2029, we're going to have 4 RFPs that are going to be released, or is it 2 RFPs that are going to be released? So 2 to find a consultant to, work on a site, and then 2 for the development of the sites. Did I understand that correctly? That would be section 1C, where we talk about by October 24, we'll have an RFP, and then by the end of 2029, we are planning to actually have an RFP to development, and then we'll have more RFPs coming our way. So does this mean we're looking into?
It could be 1 or 2 separate RFPs by 2024, or 1 or 2 separate ones by the end of the planning period, depending on how the city would like to solicit proposals on those sites.
So does this mean we are going to have possibly 4 sites developed by the end of this cycle?
That would be the goal as described in this program, but that is based on the response that the city receives. It is not obligated to accept just any proposal. It would be the city's commitment is to solicit the proposals and consider them.
Thank you. No further questions.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I'd like to entertain recommendation for this go to the, it's the resolution number, I see, okay. So,
There's a resolution if you'd like to.
yeah, so do you like to read the resolution into the record?
I'll make a motion, but
Yeah.
I was wondering if we could have the list of the APNs to be a bit more clear when it's being presented to council, just for clarification, so they are aware of the sites, and if they're, again, remembering last time, it was a bit confusing to know exactly what the sites were, or maybe even a map that can go where they're able to see. I'm ready to make a motion. If there's a second, I'll read the resolution.
I'm willing to second.
Thank you. Do I need to read that?
Members of the commission, I would recommend that you,
Yes.
that you
Yeah,
do
re-
read it into the record. Thank you.
Of course. A resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Glendale recommending approval of the 6th cycle housing element, case number PGPA 2119840. The following commission of the City of Glendale does hereby resolve as follows. Section 1, the Planning Commission does hereby find and determine as follows. The Planning Commission reviewed amended Cycle 6 housing element previously adopted by City Council on February 1st, 22, and as amended to address comments received by California Department of Housing and Community Development. The Planning Commission held a duly noticed public hearing on November 16, 22, to consider the amended six-cycle housing element previously adopted by City Council on February 1st, 22. The Planning Commission has determined that the proposed project is exempt under state CEQA guidelines 15061B3, common sense exemption, because the project involves policies, programs, and actions to meet the city's RHNA allocations RENA allocations that either would not cause a significant effect on the environment or incorporate actions that have already been taken by the city. The project is further exempt pursuant to state CEQA guidelines section 15283 and California Government Code section 45584. And it goes on by section 2, based upon the foregoing, the Planning Commission resolves the following. Recommended to the City Council the approval of the amended Cycle 6 housing element previously adopted by City Council on February 1st, 22, and as amended to address comments received by HCD case number PGPA 2119840.
Thank you.
Adopted today.
Yeah, roll call, please.
And I would just like to add that we have no members in the audience who wish to speak on the item, and there were no callers also. So before we
Thank you.
continue on with that, I just wanted to make sure that the Planning Commission is aware that there were no members of the public who wish to speak at tonight's hearing.
Thank you. Yeah, roll call, please.
Board Member Shabazian,
Yes.
Board Member Manassian,
Yes.
Board Member Crochin,
Yes.
and Chair Lee.
Aye.
The resolution passes 4-0.
Thank you. So, next item is, oh, here it is. Okay. Community Development Department updates.
We would just like the Planning Commission to remind the Planning Commission that there will only be one meeting in December, and to wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving holiday.
Thank you. Okay.
Again, I apologize, I was late today, like 15 minutes.
Is there a motion to adjourn or any other?
Before that,
comments?
happy Thanksgiving to all. Thank you, staff. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you, thank you.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay. Meeting adjourned.